The change in central government is followed by the change in domestic policies. Janata Government repaid the wrongs of Indira Gandhi in her own way. In this video, we are going to discuss the domestic affairs during the Janata Government. As stated in the last video, the greatest consensus among the factions of Janata Government was on the new regime's treatment of the former Prime Minister. The Janata leaders were determined to take Mrs. Gandhi pay for having imposed the emergency. As many as 8 commissions of inquiry were appointed, each headed by a retired judge. Several dealt with corruption of Congress chief ministers, and one dealt with the treatment of JP in jail. There was also a commission set up to inquire into the affairs of Sanjay Gandhi's Maruti company. The inquiry with the widest ambit was the Shah Commission, set up to punish those guilty of the excesses of the emergency. It was headed by former Chief Justice of Supreme Court, Justice J.C. Shah. It met in a courtroom of Patiala House in central Delhi. In its first few months, the Shah Commission examined scores of witnesses, bureaucrats, police officers, municipal officials, members of Mrs. Gandhi's cabinet, and many more. But the lady herself refused to testify. 3 times she was called to the witness box. 3 times she came and chose not to answer the questions, claiming she was bound by the oath of cabinet secrecy. A journal victimized during the emergency saw this as an outrageous attempt to make a mockery of the proceedings of the commission. A journalist more sympathetic to the other side compared the Shah Commission to Nuremberg trial. The change of government at the center presaged changes of regime in the provinces as well. Following Mrs. Gandhi's lead in 1971, Janata government dismissed state governments across northern India, claiming that the results of the general election showed that these had lost the confidence of the people. In fresh elections held to the state assemblies, Janata won easily in Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and Bihar. Of the 10,000 and more episodes of caste violence reported in the first year of Janata rule, one was to have an impact far beyond its place of origin. This was the incident at Belchi, a village in Bihar, where on 27th May 1977, 9 Harijans were burned to death by an upper caste mob. The killings in Bihar drove Indira Gandhi into action. Her political instinct told her that this might be the start of the possible comeback. Mrs. Gandhi flew to Patna and proceeded to Belchi. The roads had been washed away in the rains. She had to exchange her car for a jeep, then this for a tractor, and then, when the mud got too deep, she had to use elephant. It was via this mode of transport that the former Prime Minister reached Belchi to console the families of those killed in the violence. The visit to Belchi was her own initiative, but Mrs. Gandhi's revival was also helped by a less inspired initiative of the government in power. In the first week of October 1977, the Home Minister Charan Singh decided that he must arrest the former Prime Minister. Acting on his instructions, the Central Bureau of Intelligence prepared a charge sheet accusing her of corruption. Mrs. Gandhi was kept overnight by the police, but when they produced her before a magistrate the next morning, he threw out the charge sheet as flimsy and insubstantial. The bungled arrest rebounded badly on the Janata government and helped redeem the reputation of their hated opponent. In the months between her defeat in the elections and her visit to Belchi, Mrs. Gandhi had been very depressed. She and Sanjay both contemplated retirement from politics. Settling in a cottage in the Himalaya was an option being considered. The Belchi incident brought Indira Gandhi decisively back to the center of political stage. As one of her opponents later recalled, her visit to Belchi served several purposes. It helped damn the Janata government as being indifferent to the fate of poor and the Harijans. The ride refurbished Indira Gandhi's image as a friend of the poor and lowly. It also showed to the average member of Congress party that Indira Gandhi was a woman of action and she alone could be trusted to lead the fight back to the power. Let us now turn to what was happening in Indian states. As said earlier, Janata government dismissed 9 Congress governments and won majority in Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and Bihar. In other states too, changes were afoot. In West Bengal, a coalition government of left-wing parties came to power with a comfortable majority. The CPM itself won 178 seats out of 294, with its allies winning a further 52. Back in 1967 and 1969, CPM had shared power in Bengal with non-communist parties in unstable coalitions easily undone by Machiavellian governors sent from New Delhi. Now they faced no such problem and could set about effecting reform within the bourgeois system. The new chief minister was Jyoti Basu, the Middle Temple lawyer who had been the number 2 in those UFLF governments of the 1960s. Others in his cabinet were less genteel, coming from a background of work with farmers and laborers. Their top priority was agrarian reform. This focused on legalizing the rights of burgadars or sharecroppers who cultivated the bulk of the lands in rural Bengal. The new government's Operation Barga set about recording their rights and enhancing the share of the crop they could keep. Previously, the landlord would take half or more of the crop from the tenant. After the reforms, this share was reduced to 25%, with 75% being retained by the Bargdar. More than a million poor peasants benefited from the reforms. Meanwhile, the Left Front also conducted elections to village panchayats. Panchayati Raj or local self-government was a stated policy of the government mandated by the constitution, but honored mostly in the breach. The Panchayat elections of 1977 in West Bengal were the first conducted with such seriousness and on such a wide scale. As many as 55,000 seats were contested for, with left front candidates winning two-thirds of them. Notably, most of those elected on the communist ticket were not sharecroppers, but small landlords, teachers, and social workers, members of what, in a classical Marxist parlance, would be termed the petty bourgeois. But they were party members or sympathizers. Along with Operation Barga, the Panchayat elections helped deepen the hold of the left front over the Bengal countryside. There was also a change of regime in Tamil Nadu. Here, the DMK had ruled for a decade before being dismissed on spurious grounds during the emergency. In the elections now called, their main rivals were AIADMK, a breakaway from the parent party, led and completely identified with the legendary film star M.G. Ramachandran. In the polls, the superior organizational machine of DMK proved no match for the charisma and appeal of MGR. The AIADMK won 130 seats to its rivals 48. MGR quickly made it clear that the old slogans of Northern or Hindi imperialism were now out of date. He said that he wanted good relations with the center. Within Tamil Nadu, the government instituted a slew of populist schemes in keeping with the chief minister's image on the silver screen of being a friend to the poor and needy. Among them was a midday meal provided at state schools, in the hope that this would induce girl children to come to class and stay there. There were also hopeful developments in regions and among peoples traditionally more truculent still. In the summer of 1977, Morarji Desai met the Naga leader A.Z. Piso in London. Although no settlement was reached, the fact that two met and in a foreign country was seen as a significant concession by Indian government. Later in the year, assembly elections were held in Nagaland. The 82-year-old Desai went to campaign, braving the risks of landing in mist-covered valleys. One newspaper commented that his visit was testimony to the importance he attached to the polls, which New Delhi hoped would end once and for all the sectional claims of Mr. Fizo and his followers. There were also fresh polls conducted at other end and equally troublesome end of Indian Himalaya. Before the emergency, Sheikh Abdullah had come to power in Kashmir at the head of Congress regime as part of an accord he had signed with Mrs. Gandhi. Morarji Desai was keen that elections be held to test the legitimacy of a piece of paper signed by the two individuals. The assembly was dissolved and the Sheikh re-established his national conference. The national conference won 46 out of 75 seats, a comfortable majority. Sheikh's men had swept the Muslim-dominated Kashmir Valley, but in the Hindu-majority Jammu region, it won only 7 seats out of 32 at stake. That said, this was still the first truly fair and free elections in the state since independence, proving to the people of Kashmir that they too have the same fundamental rights which the people in the rest of the country enjoy and exercise. In Bihar, a commission set up in early 1970s had recommended that 26% of all posts in the administration be reserved for the backward castes. The report had been buried during the emergency. After the victory of Janata Party in Bihar in 1977, the new chief minister, Karpuri Thakur, disinterred the report and decided to implement its recommendations. Thakur's decision led to a storm of protest from the forward castes. Rajput and Bhumihar students burnt buses and trains and vandalized government buildings. The backward caste leaders were unyielding. Their resolve was strengthened by their strong representation in the state legislature, where nearly 40% of the members came from the castes that would benefit from the extension of reservation. As one of the politicians put it, our movement is not only for reservation, it is for capturing political power in North India and in Delhi. Indeed, under pressure from the backward caste lobby within Janata, Morarji Desai had appointed a commission to examine whether reservation should be extended to central government jobs too. As mandated by constitution, 15% of those jobs went to scheduled caste and 7.5% to scheduled tribes. Now, the backwards wanted a share as well. The commission that would look into this matter was headed by a Bihar politician, B.P. Mandal. And this was the beginning of famous Mandal Commission. In government itself, there was a rift between the top leaders, especially between Charan Singh and Morarji Desai. With the revival of Indira Gandhi after Belche incident, and problems between Janata Party's leadership. The Janata government was in crisis. Okay. In our next video, we will discuss the crisis in Janata government, which changed leadership and politics of India once again. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, share and comment because discussion is solution. For more discussions, please subscribe our channel.